How good is the 7800 XT in Fortnite? It is the popular opinion out there that Fortnite doesn't run the best on AMD GPUs. While I think that probably used to be the case, the newer GPUs seem to have no issues if you run them in DX12. So for this video, we're going to run Fortnite on DX12 on 4K, 1440p, and 1080p to see which one gives you the best and funnest gaming experience that also looks pretty good. But before we do that, you got to check out this word from our sponsor. This video is brought to you by PC Bros. If you're in the market for a gaming computer, you're definitely going to want to check them out. They sell gaming PCs, gaming laptops, and much more at PCBros.tech. Their staple builds include anything from the office PC turned into a gaming machine to the gaming PC with RGB and the latest and greatest parts. If you don't find what you're looking for on their website, they have a form that you can fill out so you can get the parts that you want in your PC. Their customer service is unmatched and offer a 1-year warranty on all their PC builds. PCBros.tech is definitely a place you want to shop for your next gaming PC. And if you do, use the link down in the description or the code MattMiller4 to save 4%. First up in 4K, we turned everything on the epic settings and we turned the anti-aliasing and super resolution all the way up. So everything was on completely epic settings. Now, I'm not going to say this every time I hop out of the battle bus, but just so you know, Fortnite is notorious for, not being the best experience when you first hop out of the battle bus and when your glider pulls. It's smoother sometimes than others, but at 4K epic settings, it was not fun. We got 30 FPS most of the time as we walked around and ran around, and it was a little hiccupy. And the millisecond response time was really high. So the first thing we did was we turned off the anti-aliasing to see if that would help us out at all. It gave us a small FPS boost, but not enough to be very noticeable. So then we turned off the shadows. I normally recommend never playing Fortnite with shadows on just because it's hard to see and it's better experience, competitive shooter game than not have shadows on. This gave us a drastic improvement in our FPS, as you can see here. This gave us around 90 to 100 FPS, which was pretty good in 4K. Next up, we turned off global illumination and reflections to see what we could do. This again was a very small FPS bump, not the best in the world. Then to finish this game off, we bumped everything down to low except for the view distance. We put that on epic. This is kind of the competitive settings. We wanted to see what the maximum FPS we could get in 4K was using these types of settings. And we got anywhere from around 120 to 140 FPS. This is pretty awesome on 4K that you could play 120 FPS in Fortnite on 4K. I think that's pretty awesome. 1440p is next, but before you do that, and let me know, would you like to play Fortnite on 4K or 1440p? In 1440p, we did the same thing. We put the epic settings all the way up and we hopped out of the battle bus to see what it would be like. It was much smoother coming out of the battle bus here, but we got around 60 FPS. So the input delay was still a little high, but it was much more playable than the 4K experience was. Now, just as we did in 4K, we turned off the anti-aliasing and super resolution, and we got a moderate FPS gain. In the forest and in the mud in Fortnite, you're going to have a little bit lower FPS than you do anywhere else on the map. So we got around 75 to 80 when we got out of this area, but in this area, we saw little to no improvement by turning this setting off. Then we turned off shadows to see what kind of performance difference we would get. And again, not a huge difference when we just turned off the shadows. But when we had shadows off, global illumination and reflections off, we got over 150 FPS in 1440p, which is pretty dadgum awesome. Now this guy ruined our fun and we couldn't finish our game, so we had to load back up and drop down one more time so that we could play around with these settings to try to get as close to 240 as we could, because considering we were close to 150, 170, it shouldn't take much for us to get over 200 FPS. We tried a bunch of different settings with the view distance on epic and everything else on high, medium to low, and pretty much no matter what we did, we got around 200 to 240 FPS. There were occasional drops, but that's just Fortnite. It was a fun and smooth experience, but it's on to 1080p to see exactly how this performs. I personally probably wouldn't play with this card at 1080p, but we're going to see how much FPS you can actually get. There are some 360 Hz monitors out there, but you're probably going to need performance mode for that. But let's just find out. On the epic maxed out settings, same thing, dropping out of the battle bus, little stuttery, but pretty smooth at 100 FPS. Then we lowered the settings one by one, just like we have in the previous two resolutions, to see what they did. And again, it was just moderate upgrades throughout each of these. Although I will say in 1080p, shadows made a huge difference. It gave us like a 30 FPS jump. It didn't really do that with the other resolution. But when we turned shadows, global illumination, and reflections off, with everything else on epic, we got over 200 FPS, and sometimes it would even shoot up to like 299 to 300, depending on what was going on. It was pretty smooth and pretty playable, and in the end, we finally got that dub. So we played 4 games of Fortnite at 4K, 1440p, and 1080p. Overall, I'm loving this 7800 XT. Yes, the 6800 XT can probably give you just as much performance, if not more in certain games, but this gives you the AV1 encoder, and it comes in white. That's so awesome. But if you're not convinced, you can go watch this video on the 4070.